What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Walkthrough with me, Jamie Hoyle. We are here today to talk about roster changes the Chargers made after announcing their initial 53-man roster. We have some additions, a couple trades, some subtractions, and an extension to talk about. So before we get into the changes, we're going to talk about an extension, a very well-deserved extension. One for a player who's been a Charger for a couple of years now, has played at a very high level, has continually come through time and time again in huge situations, and just seems to keep getting better. And no, it's not the person we thought it would be. I think most Chargers fans thought it would be Rashawn Slater celebrating an extension heading into his fourth season in the NFL. But that's not the case. It's Cameron Dicker, otherwise known as Dicker the Kicker. Cameron Dicker signed a 4-year contract extension earlier this week. That extension is for just a shade over $22 million and has $12.5 million in guarantees. He is one of the top 5 highest paid kickers in the NFL. If I'm reading this correctly, it doesn't say exactly what his slot is in terms of pay, but it looks like he's probably second or third, somewhere in that range, just based on the way that's worded. The tweet is worded there. And he will be a Charger through 2028. And I think this is good news for a lot of reasons. And this is probably the most kicker talk you'll ever have on a Lightning Round podcast affiliated show. But it's deserved here. Dicker has been a phenomenal kicker for them. He's hit some huge kicks. His leg continues to get stronger. He's starting to get really good at placing kickoffs. And you want to see your team reward guys who perform like that. And I think that's what's happening here is the Chargers realized they needed to extend him. They could have waited another year, but then you're potentially, he's getting more expensive. You're dealing with the stress of dealing with a contract extension heading into his final season under contract, which you don't want to do. In this case, they go ahead and lock him up a year early. They pay him handsomely, making him one of the top 5 highest paid kickers in the NFL. And I think, like I said, this is just a good message to send to all the players, but especially the young players on this roster, especially on the heels of cut day, which is, hey, if you perform, if you do your job, you're going to get paid. And that's what everybody wants to know. So kind of a good message to send at the tail end of Jim Harbaugh's first offseason as the head coach. So kudos to Joe Hortiz for getting it done. Congratulations for Cameron Dicker. All good news. Very happy for him. Glad to see that get done. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Chargers' initial 53-man roster. A couple things to point out here. One, Nick Niemann is on the IR with the designation to return. That means he has to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. When the Chargers decide that he's ready to come back, they can have him practice with the team for 21 days before activating him. If he's then ready to come back after those 21 days, they can activate him. If he's not, they lose him for the rest of the season. I think a lot of people probably expected Chris Rumph to be in that same category because teams can designate 2 players for that designation to return. They chose not to do that in this case. You have Bucky Williams, Chris Rumph II, Chris Collins, and Tyler McClellan all going on the IR. They are not able to return. And then just kind of looking at some spots where the Chargers were, a little heavy on bodies. They kept 4 running backs. They kept 7 corners and 4 safeties. And I think what you're going to see is they definitely revamped the cornerback room, the quarterback room, and the running back room with the moves they made. So now that we've looked at the initial 53-man roster, let's take a look at one of the big moves the Chargers made. It's a move that I think was needed, a move that I think some people were surprised to see the Chargers trade for a player at this position, but I think it was absolutely necessary. So that move is the Chargers trading a 7th round pick in 2025, so next year, for the rights to Taylor Heineke in the last year of his contract that he signed with the Falcons. So a 7th round pick that has the ability to become a 6th round pick next year if Heineke meets certain requirements. I don't know what those requirements are yet, but if he meets them, it can become a 6th round pick. I've seen some people who cover the Chargers saying that it was a surprise to see the Chargers trade draft capital for a 1st round pick, or for a backup quarterback. I guess they thought that was kind of a waste, but to that, I would say it wasn't that long ago they spent a 5th round pick on a backup quarterback who they now need to replace. So if you can replace the guy that you drafted with a 5th round pick with a 6th or 7th round pick next year, that seems like a pretty good deal, especially if Heineke is able to, God forbid, if Herbert gets hurt again, if Heineke is able to win you a couple games, keep games close, should Herbert not be available to play, that's easily worth a 7th round pick. It's certainly worth a 6th round pick. I don't get the shock and awe over trading a 7th round pick for a backup quarterback when they went through what they went through last year after Herbert got hurt. And really, they've been in that same position every year Herbert's gotten hurt. So it was time to make a move. What does this mean for the quarterback room? I would say probably for the first few weeks while Heineke gets up to speed, Easton Stick remains the 2nd quarterback. And then once they feel like Heineke is ready to go, he will be the QB2, and Stick most likely stays as QB3. Hopefully they trade him. They can still do that. I would not object to them cutting him either. I know there is some fear that another team might pick him up. If they cut him, honestly, you can't deal in fear. He doesn't fit your roster. He's not gotten better in the years that he's been here. He was awful this preseason. If somebody wants to trade for him, make that trade. If you cut him and somebody wants to add him as their 2nd or 3rd quarterback, hey, more power to you. I don't think that should be a deterrent from the Chargers potentially cutting Easton Stick. So that's the first move. The second addition that the Chargers made was at cornerback, and they traded a 6th round pick in 2026, I believe, for defensive back Elijah Molden from the Titans. As I mentioned before, the Chargers kept 7 corners and 4 safeties in their initial 53-man roster, and it turned out they were just giving themselves flexibility to drop guys as they made additions. Molden is a guy who can play slot. I don't know that you'll see him play outside, but I think he has some experience playing outside. He can play safety, and he has special teams value. So his immediate impact is going to be on special teams, and he's just he's an experienced player. He's still young, but he's experienced heading into the last year of his contract, a guy who's got a lot to prove, who will have, I'm sure, an opportunity to earn playing time on this roster, whether it be at slot or safety, or outside corner. Most likely slot and safety, that's my guess, and especially on special teams. The next move they made, which was actually the first they made in the sequence of moves, but it was the least exciting, so I moved it to the back of the list. Sue me. The other move was they traded for former Titans and former Michigan Wolverine running back Hassan Haskins. Haskins is a guy who was being lauded as a special teams demon by the Titans general manager Ran Carthon and head coach Brian Callahan. He did not make the roster. I think this is a special teams move. You look at Nick Neiman being out. You look at Chris Rumpf being out. They lost Amin Ogbongbemiga last in the offseason. So the core special teams unit is quite different than it was last year. So I think this is mainly a special teams move. I don't know how much Haskins will carry the football, but if he does, he's a physical bruising back, the kind of back that I think the system favors in a lot of ways. So I'm sure he will have time to probably step in as a personal protector on special teams, and we'll see if he can climb the depth chart and earn carries as the RB4 assuming he is active on game days. So those are the three moves, the three additions, I should say. In order to make room on the roster for those three players, the Chargers cut JT Woods, Tony Jefferson, and Jarrett Patterson. So with that in mind, the Chargers roster looks like this after the moves. We have a quarterback room of Justin Herbert, Taylor Heineke, and Easton Stick. We have a running back room of Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Vidal, and Hassan Haskins. Also, adding Haskins might allow them to inactivate Vidal at times during the season, depending on matchups. So there's something to keep in mind there. And then the big changes, they wind up dropping Tony Jefferson. They cut him. They wind up waiving JT Woods, and they waive Jarrett Patterson. Because Tony Jefferson is a vested vet and he has more than 3 years of service time in the NFL, he did not have to pass through waivers when he was cut. So the Chargers were able to cut him and immediately place him on the IR. I'm sorry, not the IR, on the practice squad. So Tony Jefferson is on the practice squad. JT Woods did not clear through waivers. He wound up signing on the practice squad for the Eagles. And I believe Jarrett Patterson is on the practice squad for the Chargers at this point. So those are the changes. That's everything that happened with the Chargers this week after announcing the initial 53. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I hope this was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. Please keep an eye out for the start of our 5 days a week of content coming up with the start of the season. On Tuesday, you're going to see this show will be released on Tuesday. On Wednesday, you'll see Score More with Garrett. On Thursday, you'll see my first episode of the walkthrough with Dennis Ackerman from the Believe in Raiders podcast. And then Friday will be the TLR Roundtable, our mailbag show. And Sunday, of course, after the game, will be our live reactions on After Hours. Starting next week, Craig will slide into that Tuesday slot with I Got 5 on it. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe on Twitter, on YouTube, all that good stuff. If you haven't already, join the Patreon and join the Discord. It's a great community. We're having a lot of fun with it. Lots of great conversations going on. And that's it. So thank you all very much. I will see you soon on Thursday with the walkthrough. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.